Newcastle United are through to the quarter-finals of the League Cup after beating Chelsea at St James's Park yesterday. It was a really good performance filled with a lot of familiar patterns. In this video I'm going to explain exactly what went right. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video and finally an analysis video on the channel where it's a positive Newcastle United result and something that I think has been long overdue in terms of attitude, energy, approach, tactical nuance, everything like that was really on point against Chelsea yesterday. Complete flip side to the Stamford Bridge game on Sunday in the league where I think Chelsea exposed what Newcastle exposed in Chelsea yesterday, which is a defensive weakness and a refusal to move away from a specific ideology and a specific way of doing things. And, Newcastle were able to capitalise really well on certain things that Chelsea did yesterday. But before we get into that, please do remember to like, share and subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 700 subscribers in the next few weeks. Really enjoying these analysis videos and also enjoying the idea of bringing more non-Newcastle United content to the channel. I'm at Hull City against Portsmouth on Saturday with the second part of my Around the Grounds feature. I haven't come up with a snappy name for it yet, but that is coming. Also still working on a podcast that will come as well with a friend of mine and some sort of maybe some opinion pieces and opinion videos on other things that are outside of Newcastle United as well in football, notably Ruben Amorim going to Manchester United. I've got something that I'm working on there as well. So please continue to subscribe and share these videos and really get involved in the comments as well. Let me know what you think about yesterday's performance. If you also haven't checked out my live stream from last night where it was an instant reaction just after full time, please do check that out as well. A few of you got involved there too. So the way I would summarise this and the way I would sort of characterise it is it felt like it was straight out of 22-23. It felt like it was back to basics for Newcastle. It felt like the team was doing the things that they did that in that season that was so successful. They were pressing from the front. They were winning the ball high. They were swarming teams. They were really proactive when they won the ball. There was a lot of movement, a lot of different things, power, pace, energy, control as well, with Tonali in the midfield at the base of it, playing in that central role, which he hasn't been doing. He tends to be playing on one of the sides, whereas this time he played centrally, dictated the play and showed that maybe he is the answer at number 6 in the long term as well. That's a positive, but overall I think you've got to credit Newcastle and credit Eddie Howe for sort of taking them back, stripping them back to what they know best and finally getting a really good performance out of it. And it was good in two ways, I think, actually. The first half was really attacking. In the second half, it was more about that defensive strength. They sat back and allowed Chelsea to try and break them down. What was so good about it was they were really, really able to make the box compact. So Chelsea had a lot of possession. It felt like they carved out a lot of opportunities, but they never really, beyond one opportunity where João Felix really should have put it away, they never really created that many opportunities that were clear-cut because they couldn't get into the box because Newcastle did so well at marshalling it with Lloyd Kelly and Fabian Schär. Kraft as well was fantastic. The biggest thing that he did on the night was turn into Diego Maradona in that second half with that mazy run for William Asula's shot, which hit the post, which I'll get into in a minute when I speak about him. But yeah, what I think was really good defensively was that they were compact in the area. But the real crux of where I want to get to today is that, again, the midfield and the makeup of that midfield. And I think we learned a lot. Before the game, it was really interesting. A big risk to not start Bruno Guimaraes in a game where it's so important to win because Newcastle haven't ever won a game without him in the team, and obviously that's still not the case because he came on and played a crucial role later on, which I'll touch on in a minute. But Longstaff alongside Willock and Tonali in the middle, Joe Linton on the left, Gordon on the right, and Isak up front. It worked really well. A few of the hypotheses that I've put forward on these videos have kind of been proven right in last night's performance. Willock being crucial to the way Newcastle play, so energetic, so dynamic, so different to the other players. Like Tonali will do a certain thing, Miley and Longstaff will do certain things. When they're in the team, Joe Linton's powerful, but nobody changes gear like Willock. Nobody drives the team on in the same way like Willock, and I think that is why he's so crucial. Whether he starts games or comes on, he always has that ability to impact the game in a certain way, and especially when he's linking up with Joe Linton on the left. But the other thing is, as I say, Joelinton not playing in midfield really worked because the possession element and the what you can get into that midfield if you don't have Joelinton. There's another space for another number 8 who can do something a little bit different. Joelinton works really well on the left, and lots of the narrative around Joelinton has been how he's moved into being this great midfielder, but actually I think he's just a sort of Swiss Army knife of a footballer who's very, very good at certain things, heavy pressing, powerful, physical, drives forward, really works really hard for the team, which you can put in a forward position or you can put in a midfield position. I think that's why it basically worked. But we might be getting to a point where, similarly to with Jacob Murphy or Sean Longstaff, that the sell-by date of the sort of surprise element of Joelinton going into midfield and the raising of his level has maybe we've reached that, because the level of expectation is different. Maybe he has to go back to that left-hand side to really be most effective, because that's why I think it really works. As I say, that works really well. But going forward, you have to get Bruno into the team. He's the captain. Sean Longstaff coming in was another huge, crucial thing, because I think with Longstaff, as I've said, it's not about what he necessarily brings on the ball, and that is long-term going to be an issue, that he isn't as effective on the ball as he could be, and other players are better at doing things with the ball and dictating the play and actually impacting the game from a Newcastle perspective. But from a defensive perspective, from a knitting things together perspective, Sean Longstaff is really, really important and really crucial. If you look at the difference in the midfield on Sunday and the midfield last night, I think it was the lack of space in between them. And Tonali was able to just focus on dictating the play and focus on on passing the ball and controlling the game without having to worry about making the runs to close the gaps and so much and keep everything tight, because Longstaff was doing that next to him. And we've seen the same thing happen with Bruno, we've seen the same thing happen with Willock as well. When they're next to Longstaff, they can express themselves a little bit better, which maybe isn't the case. You can't have 3 midfielders expressing yourself, which is what Tonali wants to do, what Bruno wants to do, what Willock wants to do, what Joelinton wants to do. So Longstaff coming into that midfield really does tighten things up, whether people like it or not. That's just, I think that was really proven last night. Whether Tonali sitting deep and being more disciplined is a way forward next to Bruno and Joelinton / Willock or anybody else could work as well. But I think that's what we learned about the midfield. It was more compact. It allowed a higher press. It allowed more energy because there was less threatening in behind, because Longstaff was there mopping up and making those really key interventions in that sense. Gordon on the right worked quite well. I think that's a big thing about Gordon, is that I said on my live stream last night, I've spoken to people around Gordon who watched him grow up and coached him in his early days, and their sort of take on him is that he's very versatile. He can play across those sort of front 4 positions between the 10, the 9 and the 2 wingers. Only in Newcastle really has he become seen as this sort of definite left wing starter, and that comes from playing so well in that position. But I think it's worth playing him on the right if you can get Joelinton on the left, or maybe get Barnes playing on the left as another option. There's more options and better depth on that left-hand side, and lots of things were coming down that left-hand side, whether it's Joelinton and Willock, and Hall was again absolutely phenomenal going forward again last night. You can make the left-hand side work without Gordon. I'm not sure you can make the right-hand side work as well. When you have a Murphy and Almiron or a Barnes there, I think Gordon was as effective as he could be yesterday, and it really helped the team improve and go well on that right-hand side. And I think that's another thing that Newcastle have come into. And then we've seen Lloyd Kelly as well in that defensive position, really sort of allowing Newcastle to get up the pitch a bit more, because he's a bit quicker than Byrne. He's a bit better on the ball than Byrne, and he's been a bit unlucky because at the start of the season it was difficult for Lewis Hall. Was having some difficulties. He came in, Kelly didn't really take his chance then, and then Byrne's been the player of the season so far for me in centre back, and Hall, as I've said previously, has really been improving. So it's been difficult to find a spot for Kelly, but maybe that's a way to look forward as well. So overall, it was just more about the way that Newcastle played, the attitude that it had, the fact that when Bruno came on, his press resistance was really, really good. He helped close the game up because he's so good at taking the ball in and turning with it, and his centre of gravity and his close control is so good that he allows Newcastle to relieve the pressure, which is something that I think his strength is, as opposed to Tonali, who is maybe better at sort of playing those short key passes and dictating the play a little bit better. I think that's where those two can differentiate from each other, because there has been times where they've been trying to do the same sort of job. Maybe that's the split in the jobs, and maybe that's how it'll work going forward, particularly if you play Tonali in that deeper role. I think that was a real positive. And as I said, William Masula coming on, holding the ball up, giving Newcastle that focal point is another thing that I said earlier in the season, that I think at the very least last night's performance showed that William Masula is a good option when there's no Isak or Wilson, in those games when Gordon's been playing down the middle. And you've really lost something when Gordon's down the middle, because you don't have Gordon out wide on either side given the threat there, but you also lose that focal point down the middle. He showed yesterday when he held the ball up and brought a couple of players into play and then ran in behind, latched onto Kraft's pass and hit the post from distance. There was a lot about William Masula that I really liked, and maybe he's playing himself into contention to finally step up when Isak or Wilson isn't there, and that's a real positive. So there's so many positive things to come out of this game, and I think going into the Arsenal game on Saturday, I think it'd be really interesting to see Longstaff next to Bruno and Tonali personally, because then you've got that sort of tightening in midfield, and then maybe bringing Willock on in the second half. As I've said so many times, it's really interesting to see the difference between starters and finishers now, not substitutes. It's sort of viewed as a different way because there's 5 substitutes in a game, and Willock can have a big impact as the game goes on. Joe Linton on the left can really have a big impact as well. Newcastle can find their intensity levels, find their physicality levels, and really go at Arsenal. Arsenal will come and sit deep a little bit probably and play a little bit more conservatively. That's what their evolution under Mikel Arteta has been. It's been quite well documented with Carragher's comparison with Jose Mourinho. So Arsenal are sort of adapting to how to get the best out of themselves. And I think that watched Chelsea on last night, and maybe they'll come and try and say to Newcastle, right, you break us down. I think that's why Tonali and Bruno in the team together works, but maybe Longstaff next to that to sort of knit it together, as I say. Let me know in the comment section if you disagree with that. I'm sure many of you do, but the problem is that the ideal midfield, which has been playing so many times in the recent weeks, just hasn't worked. And I think a lot of Newcastle's issues have stemmed from that midfield. So there was a real positive break last night, a real positive change in the attitude and the approach, and it really worked. Newcastle will face Brentford in the next round of the Carabao Cup in the quarterfinals, 2 rounds from Wembley, and that's a real positive. So hopefully this can be a kickstart to Newcastle's season as well. Thanks very much for joining me. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you Saturday for my whole video, and then Sunday morning for a reaction. 10 o'clock on Sunday morning there'll be a live stream scheduled for a reaction to the Arsenal game. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.